The message came while I was watering the orange tree in the backyard. A quiet morning in East Bay, the sun just climbing over the fence, spilling across my shoulder like it always did. The water from the hose flowed steady and soft until the phone in my shirt pocket gave one short, sharp ring. I have met someone else. I have emptied the joint account. Do not look for me. I have sent the divorce papers. I read those 4 lines again and again. No question mark, no explanation. Just a sentence handed down without mercy. My hands did not shake. My eyes did not blur the way novels often describe. I simply turned off the water, wiped my hands on the towel hanging by the stone table, then stood still for a long time, staring toward the end of the garden. The orange tree would bear no fruit this year. I had known that from the start of the season, but I still tended to it every morning, as if the habit itself could not be severed. I turned and walked straight into the house. The old tiled roof house I had bought before I met Marla, my wife. She was 18 years younger than me. Beautiful, confident, quick-witted in the way that makes conversation sharp, and clever in the way that makes a man feel powerful. But also calculating, skilled at hiding those calculations behind a perfect smile, in the casual glance that forgot a wallet, or in the well-timed pout that avoided a serious conversation. My study was exactly the same. Neat, with the faint scent of old walnut wood. I sat down, opened my laptop, and logged in with my mother's birthday, a date Marla had never remembered, no matter how many times I mentioned it. I navigated to a folder buried deep in the D drive, a place no one but me knew how to reach. The folder was called Marla, just in case. I had named it in the 8th month after the first time she changed her phone password. Not because I was nosy, but because of instinct. The instinct of a 60-year-old man who had once managed over 200 employees, who could sniff out unusual expenses in a budget that looked flawless. Inside were all the files I had backed up, photos of unexplained cash withdrawals, a restaurant bill in Napa Valley from a trip she said was a partner meeting, a convenience store security clip showing her and an unknown man stepping out of a white Porsche, the one she said she borrowed from a female friend. An Excel sheet I updated every month, tracking transfers from her secondary card to a personal account under an unnamed recipient. I sat in silence before the screen. No music, no phone calls. I did not need to tell anyone. Each piece of data was just a small slice, not enough to accuse, but fitted together they formed a clear picture. Marla had been preparing to walk away from this marriage for a long time, and so had I. I stood, went to the small safe hidden in the wall, turned the old code. 1984, the year I started my first advertising company. Inside were the insurance contract, the title deed to this house in my name, and an incomplete will. I had planned to add Marla, but never did. Part laziness, part premonition. On the right-hand bookshelf sat an old photograph, Marla and me at the premiere of a wildlife documentary I had produced. She wore a black dress, hair pinned high, standing close as if she belonged at my side forever. Everyone admired her. I harbored doubts, not because I was paranoid, but because I knew the kind of look young women give wealthy, seasoned men who have just stepped away from the spotlight. Marla once said she did not like living with a retired old man. She liked men with drive, with a fast pace, with spontaneous trips. She once told me I should start a vlog about my career. I knew it was not encouragement. It was her way of telling me to find something new, so she could walk her own path without dragging along an old husband about to write his memoir. I smiled faintly, not from pain, but from surprise that I felt this calm. I returned to my desk, sent an email to Eliza, my attorney since the days I ran my company. Subject line: "It has begun. I am ready." Less than 3 minutes later, she replied, "I knew this day would come. I have the paperwork ready. Do you want me to request the court to freeze the joint accounts?" I typed back, "Not yet. Let her think she is winning." The phone buzzed again. "Do not try to find me. You should learn to let go like an adult. Oh, I have canceled the secondary card too. And you do not need to keep paying my insurance. From now on, I will take care of myself." I opened the banking app. She was telling the truth. The joint account, nearly $47,000, had been wiped clean at 6:17 in the morning, right when I was making coffee in the kitchen. I switched to my personal investment account, known to no one but me, untouched. The main assets still in my name. The house, the sound studio, and minority shares in 3 production companies I had never told Marla about. I stood, took my coat, opened the garage door, started the old Cadillac from 1999, the one Marla used to mock as smelling like a grandfather. For the first time in 3 years, I felt fully awake. The game had begun. She had just made her first move. What she did not know was that I had set the board a long time ago. Where are you as you hear this story? Leave a comment. I met Marla during an emergency meeting of the production board in San Francisco. I was 52 then. She was 34. She sat tucked at the far end of the table, long hair down, her face showing the tension of someone under the weight of every gaze in the room. She was the new assistant to director J.J. Miller, who had just been caught using film funds to pay for a private vacation in Italy. Marla had signed off on one of the payments in his place. She insisted she had no idea it was a falsified document, but the board had more than enough reason to terminate the contract on the spot. I was the last to leave. I stopped and asked her a question she would later call a turning point. Do you want to explain for yourself, or let someone else tell your story? She looked up, and for the first time I saw eyes so deeply grateful they silenced you. Not the shallow kind of thank you. The look of someone who knew a second chance was not something easily offered twice. I hired her as a temporary assistant at my company, Elliott & Company Productions, a small but respected name in the advertising documentary field. She was quick, eager to learn, and had a way of making people feel at ease. In less than 3 months, she became my personal assistant. A year later, she moved into the role of production supervisor for a short film series on wildlife conservation in the Americas. It was the first time her name appeared on a production list as associate producer, printed on the DVD cover. I remember when she quietly teared up seeing it in her hands. I thought they were tears of gratitude. Now I think they might have been the tears of someone starting to see a new road ahead. We married in our 2nd year working together. My friend's first reaction was shock. Those closer to me were concerned. A few did not hesitate to say outright that I was being reeled in by a younger woman. I ignored them. Back then, Marla was still shy at large events, lingering behind me like a small leaf seeking shelter. I loved the way she took meticulous notes at every meeting, how she learned to read production budgets in just weeks, how she was never afraid to ask about media investment strategy, how she listened without showing off. And I thought maybe, just maybe, I had found someone who could walk alongside me despite the age gap. I sent her to take an investment finance course at UCLA, introduced her to industry partners, opened the way for her to invest in a few emerging media projects. She began to have her own voice. People started calling her Marla Elliott with respect. Soon after, it became Marla, the producer-investor. I still loved her, but my love was mature, deep, steady, no longer sparkling like that of the younger men she was increasingly meeting at pitching events. I think I first sensed the change when she suggested I update my Instagram profile. Your last post was from 2019, Graham. Do not let people think you do not exist. I laughed. I do not need to appear every day to know I am living. The world does not work that way anymore, she replied, standing up and leaving half a cup of espresso on the table. After I retired following a mild heart attack, I spent my time reading, sketching outlines for a memoir about my 30 years in the business. Marla called it my still phase, but in her voice, stillness carried no peace. She was away more often, sometimes a full week without dinner together. She sent texts telling me to order in instead of calling, and she started calling me you, no longer my love. Once I knocked on her office door, the place she called her private investment room, and heard her on the phone. He does not understand. He still thinks I need him to survive. My chest tightened, not from anger, but from the sad realization that I had once helped someone stand and was now seen as nothing but an obstacle. I said nothing, just nodded when she told me she would be at a 3-day conference in Napa, then booked an appointment with my doctor to check my heart again. I bought another small safe and began organizing my assets, every document, every contract, every paper she had signed, as a precaution. Whenever she accused me of being suspicious, I only smiled and said, I'm from the old decades, you know that. Old folks keep everything in black and white. She thought I was joking, but I never joked about assets, justice, and dignity. The cracks did not come from a fight, but from the prolonged absence of the smallest things. Shared meals, the glance at the end of the day, the simple question, how was your day? When someone no longer asks how you are, it means you are no longer in the orbit of their life. And Marla, she had been out of my orbit for a long time. She just had not looked back yet. There is a kind of silence that does not come from peace, but from things no longer shared. I had lived with that kind of silence for more than 8 months. Lately, Marla was often away on business. A conference in Seattle, a project pitch in Austin, then a 3-day retreat with a women's investment group in Palm Springs. The trips came so frequently that I felt she was moving out of our shared life piece by piece until all that remained was the faint shadow of her on the bedroom wall, a reminder that she had once been here. I stayed calm. I still cleaned the kitchen, baked bread in the mornings, bought her favorite carnations every Monday, and set them on the table. She still photographed them, posting on Instagram with the caption, "The most thoughtful man in the universe," as if our marriage were still perfect. Perhaps to her, image mattered more than truth. Her phone changed twice in 3 months. First, she said it was hacked, then that it had fallen into a spa toilet. But the second time, I happened to see a message flash across the old screen she had left on the dining table. Just one line. "Can we video call tonight? I miss your voice." No name saved, just a number. But I knew that style of writing, that way of skipping formalities, could not come from a colleague. I said nothing. I quietly took a screenshot, sent it to my secondary email, the account Marla had never asked about. I created a new label in the inbox named Marla Pattern. I began building the file the way I once had for clients who misused budgets at my old company. Slow, steady, without emotion. The next week, she sat down at the table and said, "Graham, I have been thinking seriously about restructuring our assets. I think we should sell this house to raise capital for more investments. We could rent a penthouse downtown, more convenient, more modern." I looked up. Restructuring, a word Marla once called old man jargon. I asked quietly, "What exactly do you want to restructure?" She smiled, sweet in tone but with eyes that slid away. "A house is dead capital, love. Why not let it earn? The title is still joint, right? You just have to sign." I poured more tea, flexed my aching wrist, kept my voice even. "No, I will not sign." She paused, just for a moment. But I saw in her eyes not disappointment, but irritation held back. Perhaps she was no longer used to being refused. I still smiled. "I bought this house with my own money before we married. It is in my name alone. You are wrong about that." She did not argue, just folded her napkin, pressed her lips together. I heard her heels strike the wooden floor toward her office. Fast, clipped, annoyed. I opened my phone and noted one line in my journal. Proposal to transfer house, refused. Clear negative reaction. I could feel the undercurrent rising. And then the real wave came one night in March. She thought I was asleep, but I was restless from new heart medication. I sat in the small library under the warm yellow light, the clock ticking steadily on the wall. Her office door was ajar. I heard her voice low on the phone, her tone deeper, warmer, different from when she spoke to me. "No, he has no idea. Still thinks I am on retreat. Yeah, he is old. I think he will agree to split assets if I threaten. As for the house, he still keeps it in his name. But I will find a way." I sat motionless. No movement, no anger, only a sudden hollow in my chest, as if all the air had been pulled from the room. Not because of the betrayal, but because I knew the person who had stood beside me every day saw me as nothing more than a piece on a board, an investment to be cashed out at the right time. I managed to take out my phone, start recording, saved it, sent it to my email, updated the file. When she came out, I had already turned off the light and lay in bed as if nothing had happened. She glanced at me for a second, then went into the bathroom. The next morning, I called an old friend, Lou, now an independent financial monitor for divorce cases. "Lou, I think I need a quiet audit, and maybe a private investigator." Lou laughed, finally calling. "I knew you would need me eventually. This time, I will not let myself be blindsided. I will control all the data." I spent the mornings after that in my study. No more memoir reading. I reviewed contracts, transfers, signed papers. I requested bank extracts, analyzed cash movements. Everything stored neatly on an SSD labeled M Phase 1, documentation. Marla still smiled at me over breakfast, still posted flower photos, still called me her sweet husband. But she had no idea that every click, every message, every pitching trip was being tracked, not for revenge, but for protection. I did not need to shout, did not need to break a glass. I was no longer young enough to react with emotion. I was old enough to wait, and this time I would wait for her to make the next move. Because I was ready. I woke at 6 that morning, not from excitement, not from expecting birthday wishes, but because I was used to the quiet of early hours. 61 years old. I brewed coffee, still the French roast Marla hated because she said it was bitter. I thought it was honest, like something that never tried to please anyone. On the dining table was the small cake I had ordered from the old shop downtown. I ate a slice. No rush. I had always believed birthdays should not be a celebration, but a quiet inventory. What I had lost, what I still had, and how clear-headed I remained. The message came as I opened my mailbox. I am not coming back. I have sent the divorce papers by email. The joint account. I have withdrawn it all. Do not contact me. I will send someone to collect my personal things later. No emoticon, no apology, no happy birthday, just a few blunt lines like an internal memo. I set my coffee down and looked out the window. The sun was shining. Birds still sang on the wooden roof as they did every day. I did not reply, did not call, did not check whether the divorce email had arrived. No need. I simply opened the window and let the wind move through the checkered tablecloth she had once chosen because it looked Italian. Nothing in that message surprised me. The only surprise was that she chose my birthday to strike, as if to brand the day with a commemorative slap. But if that was her plan, it was wasted. I was not the kind of man to cry over a few numbers removed from a bank account. I opened my laptop, not the email, the banking app first, joint account, $0. I smiled, not bitterly, just a quiet confirmation, like checking a window latch to be sure the storm could not break it. She was gone for real. I opened my email app. There it was. Attached divorce papers, digital signature from her attorney, time-stamped 6:17 a.m. I guess Marla must have felt satisfied thinking she had struck first, believing she had slipped away clean, leaving me confused and reeling. I typed one email. Recipients: Eliza, my attorney; Lou, financial investigator; Alan, former IT staff from my company, now a security consultant. Subject: it is time, content. She has pulled out. All facts confirmed. Proceed to phase 2 as planned. That was all. No explanations, no lament. I did not need anyone's pity, especially when I had known for a long time this battle would come, and had quietly drawn the map. I poured more coffee, opened the small drawer under the bookshelf. Inside was a black SSD drive, exactly 1.5 centimeters thick, unmarked, with nothing but a folded slip of paper. Open only when the truth has no way back. I took out the drive, plugged it in. The screen lit up, asking for a password. I typed Palm Springs 2022. The name of the first retreat Marla had lied about. First folder, surveillance. Inside were recordings. The March night call, the time she spoke to Jack, the man she always switched off her camera for. I had pulled the audio from a legal mic in her office. Legal because the house was in my name. She had never asked about it. Second folder, transactions, Marla. Lou had checked all transfers from her secondary accounts. 4 new accounts opened under her name in 2 years, each used for circular transfers. From the joint account to the secondary card, then through a middleman listed as a media company, a shell. Third folder, social, metadata. Alan had recovered every photo Marla had deleted from social media. Posts uploaded then removed. Hidden check-ins, a trail from Napa to Venice Beach, from Austin to Scottsdale, all matching suspicious transaction receipts. I sat and looked through each image, each bill. I did not feel anger. I felt clarity. Like walking in fog and suddenly the wind strips it all away, revealing the road ahead, even if it leads somewhere you do not want to go. Eliza's email arrived at 8:03 a.m. Received the files, starting asset freeze proceedings. With your evidence, we qualify for an emergency order. Her attorney will be caught off guard. I type back, not yet. I want her to think she is still winning for a while. Give her enough rope to knot it herself. The next step was to call a tax law firm. I asked them to review Marla's investments, especially the media development fund she set up 6 months ago. I knew it held money from the marital account, and that would be key. My phone buzzed, a text from an unsaved number. I know this is hard for you to accept, but I deserve happiness. I hope you are mature enough to let go. Everything will be easier if you do not fight. No apology, no thanks for 9 years, not a single backward glance. Just a soft command wrapped in the pretense of I deserve. I held the message, filed it into evidence, tone, not to react, but to build a psychological sequence, to show any judge this woman had planned her exit not in tears but with calculated preparation. I shut the phone, put the drive back in the safe, turned the key, stepped onto the porch. On the table, half the birthday cake remained. I cut another slice, took my time with it, then switched on the speaker and played I'm Still Standing by Elton John, the song Marla once mocked as old and dusty. I sat quietly through the last note, then washed my hands, changed into a shirt, and started the day. A day without Marla, but with everything I needed to make sure her retreat was not the final blow. It was just my opening move. No war has ever been won by emotion. I learned that from my own field after 3 decades in it. Producing content is not just telling a story. It is controlling every frame, every sound, every layer of post-production to guide the viewer. And you cannot do that if you let emotion lead. This time, I did not let myself react with emotion. I countered with data. The first week after the divorce text, I gave no response. I said nothing to Marla, did not bother with the cold emails from her lawyer demanding a fair division of assets. I let them believe I was passive. An old man left behind, anyone could picture it. In reality, during that same time, I had already hired a team of 3. Lou, an old friend who once led high-level internal audits in the advertising industry. Raina, an independent financial investigator specializing in tracing transfers and building financial maps in divorce cases involving fraud. Devin, a corporate tax law expert who had worked with the IRS for nearly 20 years and now consulted privately. I handed them the entire archive I had been building for 18 months. Bank statements, transaction screenshots, invoices, recordings, photo metadata from social media. 48 hours later, Raina sent me a flowchart, just 3 PDF pages, but enough to shape the entire picture. Marla had been transferring money from a joint secondary account into a company called Mavis Content Lab. The company was registered 14 months ago. Its representative was Jack T. Green, 31 years old, no clear employment. The same man I had heard in Marla's suspicious calls. Mavis Content Lab had no office, no staff, just a mailbox company used to receive investments and cover personal spending. The amount Marla funneled into Mavis totaled $218,000, most of it spent on a penthouse, personal travel, and unexplained expenses. I asked if I could prove she had used marital assets for improper investment. Lou replied immediately, not only that, we can prove tax fraud. Devin began combing through Marla's filed tax reports. He found a fund called Women Creators Fund, a name that sounded noble, but in reality it was a bank account holding donations from investor friends. Meanwhile, the hidden investment from the joint account into the young lovers startup had not been declared in the last 2 years of tax filings. That is a criminal risk if the IRS steps in, Devin said. I did not strike immediately. I did not want to simply win in court. I wanted to freeze everything before her side could react. With Eliza, my attorney, I quietly filed for temporary freezes on all assets tied to the suspicious flow of money. Accounts in Marla's name sourced from marital funds. Mavis Content Lab, because we had evidence it used money from the marital account. Assets held under Women Creators Fund. Everything backed by systemized proof. Eliza presented the judge with a file nearly 200 pages thick. No emotion, just numbers, invoices, bank statements, flow analysis, timestamps. Marla's reaction came fast. "You are trying to destroy me," she wrote. "I never thought you would go this far." I did not reply. Instead, I texted Raina, "Dig deeper into Mavis. Any signs in their spending?" 3 days later, Raina sent me a report pulled from security cameras at a luxury hotel in Napa. Marla and Jack had stayed there under the company's name, but the bill listed it as a filming expense. They even staged fake behind-the-scenes photos, while in reality, it was a romantic getaway. I sat in my office, going through every picture, every spreadsheet. The yellow light caught each line of text, making it all sharper. Marla had not just betrayed me, she had leveraged the foundation I built, career, reputation, financial networks, to construct a fake investment web. And now I only had to pull the string gently. Everything would collapse. Eliza received notice from the IRS. They were opening a preliminary investigation into 2 undeclared investments for signs of tax evasion and misappropriation of fund money. "This is no longer about marriage," Eliza said. "She is facing serious legal exposure." We agreed to let the divorce proceed normally until the other side felt confident. Then present the evidence at the exact moment during the asset division hearing. By then, Marla would have no escape. An email from Devin arrived. "I have sent the report to the State Auditing Bureau. If they step in, Marla will be barred from running any financial company for at least 5 years." I felt no gloating, no joy, only rightness. Marla chose to retreat by stealing. I did not retreat. I held position, built layer after layer of defense, and waited. In my office, the second hard drive, Phase 2, legal, was fully backed up. 1 copy each to Eliza, Lou, and Devin. Inside was everything needed to prove that Marla had not only tried to deceive me, but had broken the law. That afternoon, I sat in the backyard trimming the orange tree. It had begun to bud again, even though last year it seemed almost dead. Some things only need time, and a little patience. The war was underway, not with shouting, not with tears, only with numbers, and the dangerous silence of someone who had been preparing for a very long time. Monday, Courtroom 9B, Alameda County. I walked in at 8:45 a.m., 15 minutes before the hearing. The room smelled of old wood and printer ink, the kind of scent that clings to battles over property and dignity. I chose the second row right behind Eliza's table. Beside her were 2 heavy leather briefcases, each with a plastic tag. Evidence A for review and financial misconduct. Dossier Harrison versus Harrison. Marla walked in at 8:59. Hair in a high bun, fitted dress, makeup precise. She walked beside her own attorney, a young, slickly dressed man with a condescending glance at the room. They chose the seats on the right. She did not look at me. That was fine. The judge, a sharp, reserved woman in her 50s, looked at both sides before speaking. Because there is a motion for temporary asset freeze and allegations of financial fraud involving marital property, today's hearing will examine the evidence and determine if there is sufficient basis to proceed to trial. Marla raised her brows. She did not know this. No one had warned her I was already several steps ahead. Eliza rose, calm as if about to present at an academic conference. "Your Honor, we will present verified evidence that Mrs. Marla Harrison used assets from the marital account to invest in an entity called Mavis Content Lab under the name of a person unrelated to the marriage, and failed to disclose this activity in her personal financial statements and tax filings." She raised a hand. A technician switched on the large screen into the corner. The first image appeared, a transfer receipt for $52,000 from Marla's subaccount to Mavis, dated June 13th, with the description, multi-platform content investment. Then came the video, pulled from a Napa hotel lobby camera, showing Marla and Jack Green checking in hand, under the Mavis company name. The attached invoice listed the reason for payment as lodging for nonprofit media production. Her lawyer shot to his feet. Objection, unverified recording source. Eliza neither shrugged nor stepped back. The hotel confirmed a valid extraction, along with a sworn statement from Mrs. Harrison's private driver, Mr. Jerome Gant, who drove them to the door. Jerome's report was displayed, his voice coming through the speakers. "I was asked to drive Ms. Harrison and a man named Jack to this hotel on 3 separate occasions. They always went under the Mavis company name, but I never saw any filming equipment with them." The judge nodded. Continue. Eliza opened the next file, a simple, clear cash flow chart that needed no expertise to read. Withdrawals from the joint account, the destinations, transactions disappearing inside an internal loop. In total, over $218,000 unreported in tax records. Your Honor, this is not merely a division of property violation, Eliza concluded. This is the misuse of marital assets to fund a personal relationship, with signs of tax evasion and manipulation of financial records. Marla sat still. For the first time, I saw her lose control of her expression. She looked at her lawyer, who was rifling through documents with a puzzled face. My side needed no more words. The judge turned to Marla's attorney. Do you have any evidence to refute these allegations? He tried to smile, but his voice faltered. Your Honor, we believe these expenses were the result of a misunderstanding. The investment relationship between Mrs. Harrison and Mr. Green is independent, unrelated to marital assets. Eliza cut in, her tone gentle but sharp. Then why were the investments withdrawn from a sub-account in both spouses' names? Why were they not declared in tax filings? Why were the transactions disguised as media production when there is no evidence of any production activity? The judge tapped her gavel lightly. The court temporarily grants the motion to freeze all accounts related to Mavis Content Lab and the Women Creators Fund. The case is referred to the tax authority for further investigation. Assets originating from the joint account will remain frozen until adjudication is complete. I did not look at Marla, but from the corner of my eye, I saw her face pale, lips drained of color, hands gripping her bag strap. Outside the courtroom, I got a message from Devin. IRS has received the file. The company accounts were frozen at 9:47 this morning. If she tries to move anything else, it will be flagged immediately. Hours later, I saw the first headline on a finance blog. A female investor in California suspected of using a fake fund to hide illicit cash flow. Investigation officially launched. No name yet. But anyone in the industry could guess. Marla had appeared on several so-called feminist investment podcasts, sharing her journey of building a fund to support young creators. Ironically, those interviews now served as reverse evidence, showcasing her ability to manipulate the public. Marla texted at 5:12 p.m. Graham, I need to talk to you. Please, just one call. No reply. None needed. I deleted the message not out of anger, but because I do not let emotion interfere with what I have prepared. In a world where everyone thinks older men have little left to lose, they often forget that it is the silent ones who keep the records. The trial lasted exactly 3 days. I sat at the plaintiff's table, no lawyers surrounding me, no relatives there to cheer me on, no curious eyes that made me feel I had to perform. I had only Eliza and a mountain of evidence prepared over 18 months. Marla was different. She switched lawyers at the last minute. The new one, an older woman, was clearly more professional, yet looked tired, as if she had already seen the ending to this case. From the first day, the judge set the tone. This is not just a divorce case. This is a division of assets involving fraud, the intentional misuse of marital property, and potentially a violation of tax law. Marla lowered her head. Jack did not show up. In fact, he had vanished after the IRS issued a temporary freeze on the accounts. Jack Green's social media accounts were deleted. The Mavis Content Lab website no longer existed. The partners who had once invested with Marla, the same two who had praised her in interviews, sent written statements announcing they had withdrawn funding and wanted no involvement. Eliza laid out everything with clarity. The withdrawals Marla had made from the sub-account without disclosure. The video evidence, the recordings, the driver's testimony, the tax experts' analysis of fraudulent behavior, the IRS confirmation letter of a preliminary criminal investigation, not yet an indictment, but enough to destroy her financial reputation. Marla's lawyer tried to argue that she had acted rashly during the emotional collapse of her marriage, but the recording from 6 months earlier, where Marla told Jack, "He does not know anything, let him think I still love him," played in the courtroom, and that ended any attempt to save her. The verdict came at the close of the third day. The court recognizes Mr. Graham Harrison as the sole legal owner of all premarital assets, including the house, the studio, and shares in 3 media companies. The court denies the request from Mrs. Marla Harrison for any division of property, citing her acts of misappropriation, misuse, and failure to provide transparent disclosure. Mrs. Marla Harrison is ordered to repay the sum of $218,000 taken from the marital account. Mrs. Marla Harrison is prohibited from managing, directing, or representing any financial fund, investment venture, or community fundraising operation for 5 years. The court agrees to forward the case file to the tax authority for further handling. I sat still. My heartbeat was steady. No applause, no cheers, just the quiet click of the leather case in front of it closing, the final period to a long chapter of betrayal. Marla left the courtroom without her usual pride. Her dress was creased after 3 days of trial. Her eyes were swollen. Her dark red nail polish chipped. Jack was not there. No friends from the industry. No one left to protect her dignity. That evening when I returned home, there was an envelope in the mailbox. No sender's name, but I knew the handwriting. Hurried yet neat, careful yet hesitant. Inside was a short letter. From Marla's mother. I once thought you would be the weaker one. I once thought you would collapse like every older man betrayed. But I have reviewed everything. The evidence, what the press has said. I was wrong. I no longer defend my daughter. She betrayed not only you, but also those who believed she knew what enough meant. I do not ask you to forgive. I only want you to know you did not lose. You stayed silent so people could see for themselves what was true. I placed the letter in the bottom drawer, not as a keepsake, but as a reminder. There are times when justice does not require a gavel, only enough time and patience. The following week, I received an email from a television producer. We have heard about your case. We would like you to consider writing the full story into a book or a documentary. I replied briefly, no, I do not need to turn this story into entertainment. I only need it to remain a lesson. 1 year after the divorce trial, I released my first memoir. Not dead, just quietly watching. Not to complain, not to blame. I wrote it because I knew there were hundreds, thousands of people out there who had been betrayed by a cold message, stripped of everything they owned, dismissed, and stayed silent. They didn't scream, they didn't cry out. But they remembered, they observed, and they survived. That book was for them. I no longer lived in the old house, the home that once had Marla in it. I sold it after the trial, not because I wanted to erase the past, but because I understood that a new chapter couldn't be written on a page already crumpled. I moved into a small wooden house near Lake Lafayette, where mornings came with light mist, hot coffee, and no messages of betrayal. I taught part-time at a local film school. My class was called Real-Life Screenwriting, not about making movies, but about reading life. In one session, a young student asked me, if someone had been with you for 10 years and suddenly sent one message before taking everything, would you forgive them? I looked at him, then I said, I don't forgive, but I don't take revenge either. I prepare. I protect myself. I let them think I've fallen apart. Then I rewrite the story, line by line, in a way they can't control. Marla never contacted me after the trial. I heard her startup collapsed after losing investors. The younger lover vanished from social media. She lost the right to manage finances for 5 years, barred from any legal representation of funds. A woman who once stood confidently on podcasts calling herself a media leader had vanished from the public eye. Not because someone destroyed her, but because she burned the bridge behind her. I didn't feel joy over that. I just felt it was right. Once, I received a handwritten letter from Marla's mother. The writing was firm, steady, not apologetic, but sincere. I once thought you were the weaker one. I once thought Marla would control the game. But I have seen the truth. You did not shout. You did not ruin anyone. You just stood still, and you let everything collapse exactly as its own logic dictated. I folded the letter and kept it in the drawer with the first printed copy of my memoir. I kept living. Steady, 1 lecture a week, 1 black coffee every morning, 1 new chapter each month for my second book, How to Survive a Script You Didn't Choose. I didn't need pity. I didn't need anyone to know how much I had hurt. I just needed them to know one thing. Silence does not mean surrender, and preparation is not fear. It is the strength of someone who knows their own worth. Sometimes I get emails from strangers. Some lost their homes, their accounts. Some were betrayed by their children or left by their spouses after 20 years. I can't reply to them all, but when I do, I always write one line. If you got a message like I did, how would you answer? That question, I leave to you, the one reading these words now. And if you believe justice doesn't have to be loud, doesn't have to strike back with tears or hatred, but with quiet preparation, share this story. Send it to someone who's been betrayed and doesn't know where to start. And if you want to keep walking through stories like this, subscribe to the channel because some silences are not for giving up. They are for preparing the perfect counterstrike.